if we consciously think about it, we can acknowledge everywhere we go there's a natural rhythm or pace to things. This is applicable just as much in a big city as it is in a small town, as it is out in nature. So whenever I'm in nature, and especially when I'm in a new, unfamiliar environment, what I want to try and do is assess or see that natural rhythm and natural pace, and mesh or harmonise with that as much as I can, because anything outside of that natural rhythm is going to draw attention. So what I tend to do in a new place is exactly this, just kind of sit in a nice spot and wait patiently to achieve what's called baseline. Now what will happen is when I get to a new area, and especially if I'm bringing a lot of kind of intent or energy or agitation or excessive movement, it disrupts the natural pace of things. So the animals present, birds, whatever, they're just going to kind of leave that area. They don't like what's going on. But if I sit just quietly, and normally this will only take 10 to 15 minutes, those animals and birds will start to return and go about their normal business. And then after 20-30 minutes, we're kind of back to the normal ebb and flow of things. And that's what we refer to as baseline. Now by establishing or seeing baseline, I can then measure myself against that as I start to move around. So what I'm finding, if I'm moving through the wilderness and it's kind of absolute silence around me, there's probably a problem, and it's probably the problem that I'm bringing by being sort of too fast or too careless or too noisy or whatever the case may be. And my hopes of seeing anything are limited. Now obviously from a nature watching perspective, that's undesirable, but a hunting and trapping perspective, that's cataclysmic. You know, I really need to be seeing what is moving and where and how, if I can. Obviously I'm harmonising this with the tracking, so I'm looking down for a spoor, but better still is to actually see what's in the area that I'm in. I can apply exactly this in the urban survival or preparedness side of things as well. I've just taking a sort of vantage point or a natural pause and just watching the flow of the traffic and the people and the movement around me. Now, whether it's just sitting in a cafe drinking a coffee, but being observant and engaging all your senses is the key. So I used to be sat here just kind of staring aimlessly into the distance. You know, I've got to be using all of my vision, all of my senses, you know, smelling for things, listening for things, feeling for things even, and then processing that, allowing that to flood into my mind and find baseline, or identify baseline. Now I'll highlight, as I'm doing that today, not 150 metres away from me is a really busy campsite. So it's not like you've got to be in pristine nature to make this observation. Actually, you can do it in your backyard if you wish to. Just look at the natural flow of things, but then also see how that's disrupted. So if you're in your yard and there's all kind of birds around, especially if you've got a bird feeder, and they suddenly fly away, just think what's triggered that, what's disturbed baseline, and then look around and see if there's a cat prowling, or you know, there was a big noise or something you did, and start to put two and two together to figure what doesn't disrupt baseline and what does disrupt baseline. And that's putting you onto a winning strategy to not only gain more from your nature experience, learn more from your nature experience, but if you're in a true survival scenario, one, keep calm and psychologically engaged, therefore minimising the stress and the panic, which is a hugely desirable thing. And two, increasing and optimising your chances of finding your different resources and coming up with a winning strategy. I mentioned hunting and trapping earlier, it's not just limited to that. As I see certain animal and bird movement, and insects especially, that can be drawing me to water sources, giving me kind of, you know, good directions to exploring. Definitely back home in Scandinavia, one of the things we look for most commonly is crows circling, because that can be indicative of a kill site, and therefore other things are going to be going on there, plus there may be a carcass. So all of these things are there if we just allow ourselves to see them. But you see them far more easily when you understand and acknowledge what baseline is.